everyone, my name is Rajathi, Assistant Professor from School of Computer Science and Engineering, St. Joseph Institute of Technology. Today we are going to discuss about Agile software development. So before beginning to the Agile software development, we should know why Agile. So apart from the traditional methodologies, why we need the Agile. So to understand why we are adapting to the Agile methodology, we should be clear about traditional development methodology. So traditional SDLC, so software development methodology, we have to understand. So this software development life cycle has phases. So we are going to start with planning. So this is the first phase. So after that we are going to do design, code, test, deployment. So these are the life cycle of traditional software development life cycle. So we are going to start with planning, then designing, coding, testing and deployment. So every phase has to be completed before beginning the next stage. So it is following the sequential order. So the traditional software development life cycle is following the sequential order. What is the disadvantage of this sequential methodology is, so once I completed planning, then only I am going to move for the designing phase, then we are going to move for the coding phase. If I have any doubts or any clarification needed from the design, in traditional software development life cycle, I can't come back here. So completing all the thing, so after the deployment we will get the output of the particular product. If any flaw is there in the particular output, we have to reiterate all the process again. So here after completing all these phases only we are going to get the end product. So whatever the changes we want to do for this particular end product has to be accommodated by all these steps again. So if I want to make small changes, for this particular small change I have to do all the process again. So this is going to be a time consuming one. So this is the disadvantage, time consuming, right? Then we can't address the problems then on there in every phases. So because of these kind of disadvantages of traditional software development life cycle, we are moving to the Agile software development. So what is Agile development in the sense? So Agile software development is a iterative and flexible software development process. So one thing we have to understand about traditional SDLC, traditional software development life cycle and Agile. So the difference between both the method is, so this software development life cycle is a framework which is going to give us the steps involved in a software creation. But this Agile is a methodology. So we can call this as a methodology, right? So Agile is a methodology which is going to be in an iterative and flexible fashion to develop a software. So this is the difference between traditional software development life cycle and Agile software development life cycle. So what are the principles involved in Agile? So we have principles. So principles of traditional SDLC. So traditional SDLC mainly focus on structure, documents. So what is the purpose of this means to ensure quality of the software, right? So this is the traditional SDLC principle. Then what kind of principle the Agile is going to follow? So we have 12 agile principles. We can call this as a agile manifestos, right? So agile manifesto, right? So we will discuss. So first agile principle is customer satisfaction. So for all the software whatever we are developing, the main objective is to satisfy the customer's requirement. So the agile is going to give this first principle as customer satisfaction, and second principle is to adapt to the changes. Adapt to change. So what kind of change is going to happen in the sense? So in normal SDLC life cycle, what is happening? Planning is going to happen here. Design, code, test, deployment and feedback. So this is normal traditional software development life cycle. But in agile software development life cycle, what is going to happen in the sense? So I am going to plan, right? Then based on this plan we are going to make the design. Based on the design, coding has to be performed. Then we are going to test and we are going to deploy and feedback. So what is the difference between this traditional software development life cycle and agile in the sense? So every phases after planning the output will be recorded. After designing the output will be recorded. After coding we will get some output, and after testing we are going to get some output, and deployment we are going to get the output, and based on these feedbacks the changes is going to happen here. So iteratively it is going to happen. We are not only starting from planning and completing to the deployment. So for every phases of the agile life cycle is going to be get a feedback about the particular phase. Based on this feedback we are going to make changes. So this adapt to the change principle is this agile is going to provide, right? So second principle is adapt to change. Then third one is collaboration. So it's going to support to the collaboration, right? Then continuous improvement. So we are going to make the changes in every phases. So whatever the difficulties or flaws identified in any phase, we can do updation and make the improvement, right? Then constant phase. So constant phase in the sense, so in agile software development user requirements will be gathered and it is formed as a user stories. User requirement formed as user stories, right? So these user stories will be splitted into 2 to 3 stories. 2 to 3 stories is going to be implemented in sprint 1, right? So what is the sprint in the sense? In a time interval, in a particular time interval, the user story has to be implemented, and in a particular time interval it has to give the prototype. So prototype is nothing but for this particular sprint 1 it has to give the prototype. It is a working model. This has to be provided by this sprint 1. So likewise all the user stories will be categorized into 2 to 3, then it will be given to the sprints. So every sprint has a time interval. So approximately 2 to 3 weeks, right? So 2 to 3 weeks, the particular sprint 1 has to be complete execution and it has to provide the working model as a prototype. So how many user stories are there? So for example, if you are having 10 user stories, these user stories will be categorized into 2 or 3, right? Based on the impact of the user stories. So the impact will be calculated as high value priority, high risk priority and normal. Right? The user stories has been categorized into high value, high risk and normal. So based on this prioritization, the commitment to the sprint will be allocated. Right? So this is the constant phase. So every 2 to 3 weeks, every sprint has to give the working model, and continuous improvement is by this changes and progress. So sprint 1 is giving some working model. In this working model, some fine tune has to be done by the developer. Then the particular change can be incorporated, and within the stipulated time period, the sprint 1 has to be give the updated version of the requirement. So likewise, this Agile is going to give all these principles satisfied in a Agile software development phase. Along with these principles, we have a simplicity as one principle. So simplicity, so it is going to follow KIS principle. Keep it simple. Instead of creating complex codes and complex program to deliver a particular software product, we have to always maintain the simplicity. So simplicity has to be maintained by the Agile software developer. Then self-organized groups. Self-organized, individual motivation also included in the Agile manifestos, or we can call this as a Agile principles. Then we want to work on the Agile software methodology, means what are the components involved in it. So the component involved in Agile software development, first one is requirement gathering. So we have to gather a requirement from a user. First phase is requirement gathering. Second one is designing the requirement. Third one is coding the requirement. Fourth one is testing the requirement. And fifth one is the deployment. So whatever the product we have developed, that has to be deployed to the market. And the final one is feedback. So this phase is very, very important phase in a Agile software development. Why? Because at the end of that software development, only we are not going to get the feedback. At every phases of software development process, we are going to get the feedback. According to the feedback, we are going to make changes to the phases. So requirement gathering. So how the requirement will be gathered? So requirement gathering has few of the methodologies or multifaceted approaches we are having. So first one is interviewing. Second one is questionnaire. Third one is workshop, conducting workshops, giving scenarios, giving use cases. So these are the methodologies we follow to gather an information from the user. So what we are going to do in this particular requirement gathering phase, in the sense we are going to collect the information from user to developer. Right? So this requirement gathering process is also called as requirement elicitation. Right? So in interviewing process, we have two types of interview. One is direct and another one is indirect. Right? So the static predefined questions will be given to the user with respect to their requirement, and the answers will be collected from the user. Indirect means there is no any predefined questions. Face to face communication will happen and the requirements will be gathered from the user. Then questionnaires means the set of questions will be forwarded to the stakeholder or the user regarding the requirement, and The questionnaires answers will be collected by the developer. So after interviewing and questionnaire, the developer will do negotiation. What the developer will do in the sense, they will do negotiation and prioritization. So prioritization is to maintain the flexibility and iterativeness of our agile software development. So the priorities of the user requirement will be awarded for the user stories, and negotiation is the user may ask for some requirement which is already existing and that particular requirement is unnecessary or we can avoid. These type of requirements can be negotiated by the developer with the proper justification. Proper justification we have to provide to the user or the client, right? So if I am going to do negotiate the particular requirement of my client, means I have to give the proper justification of why we don't want to implement this particular requirement and what are the monetary and resource intensity involved in the particular requirement has to be clearly explained to the client. So after this interview and questionnaire, the developer can have some idea about what the user requirement is. So based on the requirement analysis, they can give the workshop. So workshop is going to provide existing methodologies which is already available, which will be given to the clients for hands-on. Using that hands-on, the client may suggest these kind of methodology is fine or this kind of application, this kind of requirement is fine for my software process, or you can make any changes in the particular requirement. So giving a hands-on experience to the client, the workshop will be conducted by the requirement engineer. Then scenarios and use cases are the process, what is going to be involved to implement the particular requirement. Then second phase is design. So in all these phases, what we have done is we have collected the information from the client to create a user requirement document, or we can say software requirement specification document, SRS documentation. So we are going to get the SRS documentation after this requirement gathering. So based on this requirement documentation, we are going to do the designing. So designing is nothing but a visual representation of user requirement, right? Visual representation of user requirement is going to be take part in the designing. So with the usual documentation, SRS documentation, everything will be including technical and non-technical, functional and non-functional requirements over there. But with the design, everyone can able to easily understand what the user is asking and what the developer has to implement. These phases will be visually represented. So for this designing purpose, we have multiple tools. So open source tools, Argo UML, Star UML, Lucidchart, Draw.io. So we have n number of open source software to design the requirement. So in this, what we have to do for the particular software development requirement document, in the sense we will develop use case diagram. So use case diagram is going to deal with the actor and the use case involved in it. Use case is nothing but this is the process involved in the particular application. Then second one is a class diagram. So class diagram is going to have its characteristics and their function, or we can call this as a method. Then we have sequence diagram, collaboration diagram, state chart diagram, activity diagram, then deployment diagram. So all the user requirements will be categorized into these many diagrams to give the visual representation of our requirements. Then coding part. So the requirement is gathered. Based on the requirement, the design is happened using any of the open source software. Then now we are going to do the coding. So the coding part is going to deal with unit testing. Start with unit testing. That means every single unit is going to be calculated and it is going to be verified for coding has to be carried forward or not. Then pair programming. So everyone should clear about this pair programming. So what is pair programming in the sense? So in pair programming, two developer has to be participate in solving a problem, right? So two developer for same problem. So one developer is going to work with the actual coding part and another developer, second developer is going to work with the regulatory bodies of the code, regulatory bodies. So to ensure the code created which is efficient for creation of the particular software as well as it is going to support the regulatory bodies. So this pair programming has to be carried out. And one more thing, refactoring concept has to be ensured in the coding part. So refactoring is the concept called without changing the external behavior we can make alteration to the codes, right? So refactoring in the sense what we are going to do, we are going to use the existing code. This existing code can be altered based on our need. Okay. Then testing. So testing, after do the coding, we are going to conduct testing to ensure the quality of our code. So this testing will start with unit testing, integration testing, then smoke test, then acceptance test, right? So again the unit test is going to deal with the small component, every component, the modules, every modules is created properly. It is going to deal with the modules. So integration is to support the collaboration between multiple components, and smoke test is to ensure that critical components are created clearly and understandably, to ensure that basic components and critical components are created as it is, to ensure that we are using the smoke test. And acceptance test is also called as a customer test. So this is going to test whether the requirement is satisfied by the particular developed product. So the customer asked for customer requirement has to be equal to developed product. So if this is equals, then the acceptance test will be passed, right? Then after testing, we are going to do the deployment. So this testing also we have few life cycles and methodology. So the testing can be done TDD, that is test driven deployment, and event driven deployment, and exploratory crystal, extreme programming, right? So this test driven deployment is nothing but again it is going to divide with the modules. So for example, if I am working on food delivery app, right? Food delivery app. So in this food delivery app, searching for the restaurant, right? Any restaurant, many number of restaurant will be involved in a food delivery app. So searching for a particular restaurant, search restaurant. So these type of searches will include in test driven deployment, TDT. Then EDT, this is going to be EDT, or we can call this as a behavioral driven. So behavioral driven in the sense, I want a pizza. right? If I say I want a pizza, in the sense pizza is a food name. If we search for this particular pizza item, wherever the pizza is getting delivered, all the restaurants will be listed, right? So based on the behavior, we are going to search for the particular food item. So these type of searching methodology and deployment methodology called BDD, that is behavioral driven deployment. And exploratory deployment. Exploratory deployment is nothing but giving the random tries. Random tries. So random tries in the sense, in a food delivery app, so for example any Swiggy or Zomato, whatever the apps we are using, in that we have to do the login first, right, to get the food delivered. So without login, if I try to order, then how the app will work, how the app will behave. So these kind of random tries will be done with the exploratory deployment. Then the crystal methodology. So the crystal methodology is nothing but, instead of focusing on process, it is going to focus on the person involved in the particular software development process. And extreme programming. So extreme programming is also another agile development methodology which is used for the larger organizations. And if I am going to apply this XP in a larger organization, I can call this as a industrial XP, industrial extreme programming. Then after doing all the things, we are going to deploy our product in a market. Once the deployment is done, the feedback has to be collected. So in this feedback, the user queries, okay, the user queries will be involved. Queries, complaints, support, right? So this feedback is completely handled by the person, those who are not at all involved in the software development process. So these entire steps will be forwarded and iteratively happened in a agile software development process. Every process has its own feedback and adaptation, changes. If we need any changes at any time of the phase, any time of the phases, these phases, we can make changes in a user requirements. Okay. As of now, we have discussed what are the components and phases involved in agile software development life cycle. So these are the theoretical aspects of agile software development process. So apart from this, we have frameworks for agile. So the famous frameworks for agile is Scrum, Kanban, XP. So these are the famous frameworks which is involved in agile software development. So every framework is going to follow all these development life cycle as well as the agile manifestos, agile principles, right? So in testing also, we are having multiple quadrants and multiple strategies to handle the agile software testing phases. So this testing, the proper widely used testing tool is Selenium. The Selenium tool is widely used for software testing. And apart from this, the theoretical concept of agile software development is freely provided by Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is providing free learning sources for learn about this agile software development. So as with these terminologies and concept, we are concluding this session. In next session, we will discuss about how we can work on agile software development. Thank you.